Hey, what up, y'all? This is Tommy Chunn up in this bitch. You know, Tommy Chunn from Detroit, comedian. Anyway, this is another one of my retrospect, reflective comedy moments. And I was just thinking back, you guys, to when I was younger, coming up in Detroit, hot. I had a flat top. You know, I looked like a cross between Carlton and Denzel. I was slimmer back then. You know, you remember old school Tommy Chunn. And I was working all the clubs in Detroit. I was doing the black rooms. We had a room called Scruples. I was doing a night at Club Penta with Charles Kane. I was doing everything in Detroit. I was doing the Comedy Castle, opening and featuring regularly at the Comedy Castle with Mark Ridley. I was doing Chaplin's Comedy Club. They had one on Groesbeck and like 12 Mile, and there was another one on the west side on Telegraph, and I was a regular there, and I was booked at Joey's Comedy Club in Livonia, which was back then was called Stoyan's Inn, until later on, one of the sons, Pete Stoyanovich, blew up in football, and he bought it and remodeled it, and it's called Kickers. I believe it's still open to this day, I think. Anyway, point being is, I remember back then, it was the very much like, because I was working for John Yoder, comedy club booker back out of Grand Rapids, and it was very much like a comedy slave plantation kind of thing. Because I remember, I was hot and I was killing them. Most of the headliners, I was funnier than them. And I would say to Yoder, I want a headline. And he would tell me, you got to get more television and you got to do this and all of that. And he would tell me some of his audiences, out that I would do in Upper Michigan and up in Petoskey and Iron Mountain and Gawney, Sault Ste. Marie. I mean, I was doing like really white places. I mean, they would think that I was going to be Asian when I showed up because my name was Chun. I'd drive 7 hours to get to Upper Peninsula, and then I'd show up, and I was black. Even when I'd get to the gas station, like miles from the gig, before I get to the gig, the people knew I was the comedian because I was the only black dude. And it was like farm town. Like I'd drive miles and miles and it would be like barn, cornfield, cornfield. Then you get to one light in the middle of this town. It would be a McDonald's and a John Deere dealership. And you just keep driving. And as dusk came, and it became dark, you would see like a light in the distance, like a neon light. And you get closer to it, and it was a big, huge barn with neon and 1 million pickup trucks. And I'd get to the club, and they'd have to go get the manager to come get me because it was so white. They were like, yo, hold on, we need to have the manager come because we want to make sure nothing happens to you. And they would take me in the club up in Iron Mountain, and as manager would take me, I'd hear nigger, 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 nigger. And it was like one of those kind of things, And so the point I'm making is that I got so tired of being held back, because I remember back then you'd do like one show Thursday, 2 shows Friday, 2 shows Saturday, and a show Sunday. That would be like the average weekend at a comedy club around the metro Detroit area, a mainstream white club. And they were paying me like $400, $600 for the weekend, and it just wasn't cutting it, and I was too funny. So I was like, I can't do this. So I started, just taking my own money and going to LA and going different places to get television. So I remember I got booked. It's funny. I got Mark Ridley at the Comedy Castle. He had a Monday night open mic, and after he did his open mic, he had Def Comedy Jam auditions. And Bob Sumner came from New York. First time I had ever heard of Bob Sumner, met Bob Sumner. And I remember he went downtown and tried to get Steve Mamingus at the Bee's Comedy Kitchen, where downtown Tony Brown used to host. Tried to get Steve to hold the auditions there, but Steve wasn't trying to help nobody. Steve was another plantation, a slave comedy club owner, and downtown Tony Brown was his Steven, like from Django. Anyway, so what happens is I do the showcase, kill it. And back then I was doing Mandela. Brada. And I was doing my Mike Tyson. And anyway, I killed it. And one thing, long story short, Bob Sumner booked me. And I did Def Comedy Jam. And I'll never forget, it was the first black show, on comedy show in HBO. And it was the hottest show on HBO, uncensored. I mean, it was truly the first time there had ever been, freedom of speech. And so I remember I got blackballed. Like all the white clubs stopped booking me after I got on Def Jam. Not Mark Ridley, but Joey's and Chaplin's and all that, because I defied their comedy control. I went outside of that. And I went back and I told John Yoder, I want to start headlining. And he said, Tommy, you need to have more TV credits, And I was like, well, what credits do I need? And I remember I had booked Evening at the Improv and I did Def Comedy Jam. And he said, well, Def Comedy Jam, that's a B show. And I'm like, what the fuck you mean? It's HBO. But I realized now he meant black. And so there was this one comic, this black comic who only did the white clubs. He told me, man, that was a bad move. That was a bad move. You shouldn't have done that and all this stuff. And, some coon type shit. And it's funny because the show aired. I blew up. I was doing Carolines after that. I was making way more money. I went from making $600 for the weekend to making like $3,500 for 20 minutes on a Def Comedy Jam concert. Carolines wouldn't even book me. And then I got Def Comedy Jam and they booked me. It was ridiculous. And this same comedian, after that next year, started begging me for Bob Sumner's number. And I was like, dude, you told me that was a bad move. And anyway, the point being is, that's just I ain't gonna say the dude's name, but it was a rough situation. Tommy Chunn, I just want to say I still love you. You bitch!